This conference will now be recorded.
First of all, I want to thank Your Honor, Leonard Baumgarten, for sponsoring. This is in memory and in honor of his late father, and that is David ben Moshe Aaron. And we'll be discussing a lot of Moshe and Aaron today, so it's actually very, very fitting. So I'm sure we're all up on the news. Well, let me actually share my screen. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so I want to share just a few things about the ceasefire. I thought that was it was written very well. I see from the OU. Right, there's a pasuk in Tehillim. Hashem brings the isolated home, sets free those held captive with weeping and with song. And that's really, I think, how most of us feel. They write, I'm just reading. After close to 500 days of the unimaginable darkness of captivity, this long-awaited day leaves us with a confused jumble of feelings. We rejoice with the hostages who are being released, and we weep with those remaining in the hands of the Hamas monsters. We rejoice with the hostage families reunited with their loved ones, and we weep with the many left waiting. We rejoice with the soldiers able to return to their families' homes and daily lives, and we weep for those who will not. We rejoice for those whose heroic sacrifices have brought Israel outstanding successes, and we share the frustration of many of them that their mission remains incomplete. We are infuriated by the trading of monstrous terrorists for innocent hostages, and we are fearful of the evil those monsters seek to unleash. We are grateful that the new administration worked with the old to bring the necessary pressure to bear on Hamas, but we are incensed that the world has allowed this to go on for so long. We are grateful to President Trump for moving quickly to bring freedom to many. We will not forget for even a moment the many who remain. There should still be hell to pay. And a point that to me that really hits and hurts is these hostages needed to come home. That's clear. At the same time, we saw with Gilad Shalit that we got him home and we released Sinwar and 999 others. So is this setting the stage for future tragedies? And that's, I think, the ambivalence that I feel, and I think many do. It's also a very interesting article written by Nathan Slifkin. He quotes a post from a Palestinian: Gaza has won, Palestine has won, resistance has won, imperialism and Zionism has lost, the Democratic Party has lost, the future of the Zionist state continues to be eroded. Everyone who participated, aided, and abetted this genocide will continue to pay the price. He writes, the reactions to the impending ceasefire and hostage prisoner trade are extraordinary. Let's first review the losses for each side. Gaza. Hamas's entire upper leadership killed. Tens of thousands of fighters killed. Vastly outnumbering whoever will be released in the trade. Many more injured. Tens of thousands of civilians killed. Many more injured. Utterly catastrophic devastation. Seemingly invincible allies, Hezbollah, Assad, defeated. Major sponsor, Iran, weakened and shamed. Israel, nearly 1,000 civilians killed, nearly 1,000 soldiers killed, many more injured. Hostage situation, national trauma, some economic harm, significant long-term international political damage. It seems clear, he writes, that while Israel's losses are significant, Gaza's losses far, far, far outweigh them. Now let's switch and look at the gains. First at Israel. Major threats from Hezbollah spectacularly near neutralized. Major threats from Israel's biggest enemy, Iran, spectacularly decreased. Hamas leadership and tens of thousands of fighters eliminated. Restoration of deterrence in the Middle East. It's accepted that Israel can and will strike anywhere. Internally, a widespread understanding that the nation needs to be stronger and more cohesive. Without downplaying the very serious losses and harm on Israel's side, these are very significant gains. Now let's look at Gaza's gains. A military terrorist blow dealt to Israel. Political and economic harm inflicted on Israel. These are not significant benefits for the people in Gaza. At this point, there should be the situation that Israel is celebrating and Gaza is in mourning. What we're seeing actually is more or less the opposite. In Israel, where people think the ceasefire exchange is a great idea or a terrible idea, nobody is celebrating. In Gaza and among the supporters abroad, while some are bemoaning the terrible catastrophe that Hamas brought upon them, a lot of people are celebrating. Some are celebrating release from destruction. Many are celebrating a victory. They think that Hamas did a great thing on October 7th, and they can't wait for it to do something similar again. 1 second.
Is that my cell phone?
That, I think, is yours. I'm going to mute you, Linda. Sorry. Nothing personal. Okay. Just 1 second. Why are the reactions the opposite of what one might expect? The reason is the difference between Israeli Jewish culture and Palestinian Islamic culture. For Israel, the priority is the life and well-being of Israel. It's not about how much harm one does to one's enemies, it's about how much harm there has been done to one's own side and whether one's own nation is surviving and thriving. For many of the Palestinians, on the other hand, it's primarily about honor, which in turn relates to how much harm one does to one's enemies. That's much more important than how much harm one's own people suffer in the process. This is exactly why the conflict started 100 years ago. For so many Arabs, it was more important that the Jews should not have a state than that the Palestinians should have a state. And this is exactly why the various peace talks over the decades failed. And barring some extraordinary radical change in the Palestinian global mindset, that is why there will be no peaceful resolution. I think he hits the nail on the head very nicely. For us, victory means people weren't hurt and killed. And people were hurt and killed, and therefore we can't celebrate a victory. For them, victory is standing amongst their ruins saying, yay, we killed some Jews. Victory as they're standing amongst their ruins. We hope and pray for a different attitude on the other side so that we can reach some sort of peaceful resolution and live together in peace. May it be speedily in our days. Dealing with them and these negotiations made me think of what happens in our parshiot, in our weekly Torah readings, where, as we'll soon see, Moshe approaches Paro about a 3-day stint. And that, of course, is not what materializes. That, of course, is not what the plan ever, or the end plan ever truly was. So let's see these psukim. Let's see the actual verses. And then we will see 5 different approaches to it. And we could also see, I think, how much of that applies to our world today and the conflict that we are presently embroiled in. Let's begin with the psukim, the verses in Shemot. Hashem speaks to Moshe, chapter 3, verse 16, 17, 18. We have it both in Hebrew and English, so follow as you feel most comfortable. By the burning bush, Hashem says, go, lech, v'asafta, gather the ziknei, the elders of Israel, and say to them, Hashem Elokei Avotechem, Hashem, the God of your fathers, has appeared to me. Elokei, the God of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Lamor, saying, Pakod pakarati etchem, I have remembered you. Vetasui lachem, and that which is being done to you in Mitzrayim. Therefore, verse 17, V'omar eletchem, and I said, I will bring you up, may ani Mitzrayim, from the affliction of Egypt, El Eres, to the land of the Canaani, Chiti, Amori, Perizi, Chivi, Yevusi, to the land of Canaan, we'll call it. El Eres, to a land, Zavat, Chalav, Udvash, a land flowing with milk and honey. V'shamu l'kolecha, and when you go to them and tell them that, they will listen to your voice. And then you and the Ziknei, the elders of Israel, will go to the king of Egypt and say to him, Hashem, the God of the Ivriim, has appeared to us. And now let us go 3 days in the Midbar, and we will sacrifice to Hashem, our God. So Hashem tells Moshe, let them know I'm bringing them to the land of Israel, what became known as the land of Israel. And go to Paro and tell them about this 3-day stint. Let us go for a 3-day journey, furlough in the desert, and offer sacrifices to Hashem, our God. Okay, so right away we see the land of Israel, 3 days. Let's jump to chapter 5. So now Moshe is going to the children of Israel, right? Vayomru, and they said, Elokei Avrim nikra aleinu, Nelchana. I'm sorry, this is when they're going now to Paro. And they said, the God of the Ivrim has appeared to us, saying, go for 3 days in the desert, and we nizbecha Hashem Elkeinu, we will offer sacrifices to Hashem, our God. Pen yifkaenu bedever o becherev, lest he'll strike us with a plague or with the sword. Okay, that's a language that Paro will understand. Derech shloshet yamim neilech midbar v'zavachnu elkeinu kasher yomar eleinu. Let us go for a 3-day journey in the desert, sacrifice Hashem, our God, as he will say to us. Paro, of course, refuses. And then the makot, the plagues, one after another, 10 plagues. Finally, we go. We're out of there. What happened? Chapter 14. V'amar Paro. Well, we actually went out and then started to double back. Hashem told Moshe, now start to double back, right? To lure, to a certain degree, Paro and the army out of Egypt, to give them the pretense to come. V'amar Paro, Paro said, Livnei Yisroel, right? Literally to the children of Israel, right? Simple meaning about the children of Israel. Targum Yonatan actually says, he said to Bnei Yisrael, who was hanging out with him still, Datan Vaviram. They were hanging back over there. And he said to the children of Israel, but he said about the children of Israel, Nevuchim, Haim Ba'aretz. They've gotten all lost, confounded in the land. Sagar Aleim HaMidbar. The desert has closed about them. Then V'yagei Melech Mitzrayim, and then it was told to the king of Egypt, Ki varach ha'am, the nation had fled. V'yafoch levav Paro, and his heart, v'avadav, the heart of Paro, the Pharaoh, and his servants, he had a change of heart, as we say. Ela'am, about the people. V'yomer, he said, Mazot asinu, what do we do? Ki shilachnu et Yisrael me'avdeinu. What did we do that we have sent the children of Israel out from their servitude, their slavery to us? Rashi brings, we have it both in Hebrew and English, Iktorin shalachim ahem. He sent these different officers with them. to supervise, to see what's going on. The Kevin She'igiu l'shloshet yamim, when the 3 days arrived, shekavu leilech v'lashuv, that was what was set to go and return. V'ro, when they saw she'enan chozun l'mitzrayim, they saw they're not coming back. Bo v'giru l'paro, they came and told Paro. B'yom ha'revi, on that 4th day, v'chamishi v'shishi, 5th day, 6th day, he chased after them. Leil shvi, on the night of the 7th day, from when we left Egypt, Yardu liyam, we went into the sea. We came out on the other side. The Egyptians did not. B'shacharit, the next morning, Amru Shira, we sang the Shira, the song of the sea, the Az Yashir, and that is every year for us, that comes out, V'hu Yom Shvi'i Shel Pesach, that is the 7th day of Pesach, of Passover. Lakach Anukarna Shira B'Yom HaShvi, and that's why we read the Az Yashir as our Torah reading on the 7th day of Pesach every year. So we presented 3 days to him. The plan, it seems, was always to go to the land of Israel, land of Canaan. It was not to spend 3 days there. Paro seemed to have thought the 3-day deal was still in effect. And his chasing after us was because, hey, why aren't they coming back like they said they would? So the question is, if the plan was never to remain in Egypt after a 3-day stint, why were the 3 days ever brought up? And to that there are a number of different approaches. Okay? The first 3 approaches, I have it under the banner of no deception. The Ketava Kabbalah writes, only the initial request was for a 3-day holiday. After Paro rejected it, Moshe upped the ante and demanded permanent freedom. In Hebrew, Derek Shloshi Yamim, Hu Yibarach Siva Shebetchila, God commanded that at first we should request Davar Katan, a small matter like that, to go 3 days. Lavchin, in order to determine Arpa wa Mitzvah Kasher, just how stubborn is he going to be? And that's what it says. I know he's not going to let you go. Klomar, meaning, Im hayot shebakasha zu davar katan, even though this is a small, reasonable request, I know the evil of his heart, shelo yichana, he will not submit to agree to this. And he points out, he never said that we'll come back after 3 days. Right? We'll go for 3 days. Never said, and then we will return. So Moshe did not actually say anything which was sheker, which was false. Now, after he had refused even that small amount, then Moshe was talking about complete freedom. And afterwards, he said, Moshe said, afterwards, you will send them, right? And you will, right, which seems send, completely freed. And this strikes me as something that happens or happened and happens over and over with Israel's negotiation with the Palestinians. No, no, no. And then they expect that the next negotiations will begin. Well, you already agreed to this, and now we're going to start from that point. But that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Once you don't reach an agreement, then we go back to square one. We don't build on something that we agreed, if you would have agreed and you didn't, and then go from there. So So Paro, any other Monty Python fans, right? It reminds me of, I forgot which movie this was, but when he fought against the Knight of the Black Forest. We'll call it a draw, right? So he's fighting against the Knight of the Black Forest. And each of them had their sword. He chops off the arm with the sword. No problem. Takes the sword out of the hand, chops off that, right? Right? Come here and I'll, right? Ended up, right? Come here and I'll bite you, right? Right? And, all right, we'll call it a draw, right? I mean, that's almost what we have with the Palestinians, and Gaza right now. All right, we'll call it a draw. Oh, actually, they call it a victory, right? If certain terms were offered and those terms were rejected until you were beaten and decided to call it a draw, those original terms are certainly no longer binding. That is approach number one. The Nitziv, you turn the page to side 2 of the sheet. The Nitziv understands the situation changed after the plague of darkness, when Pharaoh ultimately granted permission, then it was to leave forever. Perish Od in the Hebrew. B'Shem Hashem Nelcha Na Derish. Wait, let us go 3 days. The Mashma'o, clearly that seems to indicate after 3 days, Yashuvu, we're coming back. The Kacha Yasav Paro, that's what Paro thought throughout all of the Makot, throughout all of the plagues. The Ad B'Makan Ha'arav, and through the plague of Arov, right? Moshe still said 3 days, 3 days. All of that, Haya Ba'od Lo Haya Makat Choshech. That was before the plague of darkness. What happened? At that point, Meitu Od Katane Emuna. At that point, the Jews who were not fully believing in this, they died during that Makkah, during the plague of darkness. Vayuharbe Mechunim Ivrim, right? They viewed themselves as the Ivrim. Masha'ain came, which was not the case after the Mak of Choshech, when those people who were not so interested in leaving had died. All those kol hanisharim hayu bazeh hamshech mitalim v'holchim. Then they were those who are on a much higher spiritual level, believing level, those who wanted to go. The Kavan She'igia Lamaka Bechora, when we came to the plague of the firstborn, Moshe said to Paro, Halashona She'amar Hashem La'el. Komar Hashem Bini. Thus says Hashem, my son Bechori, my firstborn Israel. V'amelecha Shlachet Bini. And he said, send forth my son. Right? And then, Az Kama Mamar Rishon Lokei Yisroel Shlachet Amivi Achogali V'loya Od Hadibor Derech Shlosh Yamim. At that point, there was no mention anymore of the 3 days. Uparo hevin kol zehetev, and Paro understood all this. And when he sent them out lechalutin. He sent them out freed. But once he heard that they were struggling there, they're lost, they're not going so well, then he thought, oh, let's go and bring them back. Okay. So again, the Nitziv says the plan was for 3 days, right? Not that then it would be end of story, but that would have been an opening. And then we could have built on that. But once Makat Choshech, then even in the conversation, the plague of darkness, even in the conversation up and back between Paro and Moshe, the 3 days were no longer being discussed. C, third approach within this category of it was no deception. The Israelites were still planning on returning to Egypt after their 3-day journey. as Moshe had promised Pharaoh. Once Pharaoh and the Egyptians drowned at Yam Suf, there was no longer any reason to return. That's how Rabbeinu Bachia learns it. Derech Shloshim Yamim, Chas v'Shalom, she'adavar zeh arma kadei levrach. Heaven forbid that we would use this deception in order to flee. Ela kadei lekabel hamitzvot. Right? Rather, God wanted to God wanted to gently, gradually bring us in under the yoke of the mitzvot. We already command about Shabbos back in Mara. And we find by Avram that Hashem didn't say to him immediately, take Isaac for the binding of Isaac, but rather he said, Kachna et bincha, et yichidcha, asher ahavta, et yitzchak. So a person, when one is being asked to make a drastic change in one's life, or to do an act that is a drastic act, it needs to go slowly, gently, gradually into it. And therefore the plan was 3 days. And that will start us on the road of serving Hashem, of the as a nation. And then there we would have gone back and then picked up from there and gone further. However, with the death of the Egyptians, Paro and the Egyptians, well, at least the Egyptians, so then there was no thing to go back to, no reason to go back. Yes, Dov?
Isn't it interesting, the 3 days, when we get to the mountain, a 3-day period to get ready for that. So here I'm thinking they're getting ready for the confrontation with
Okay, I hear that, Dov.
But where did Moshe plan to take them for 3 days?
Out to the Midbar. Egypt was filled with idolatry. Out to the Midbar. Out to the desert, and they would offer sacrifices there, and then come back. According to Rabbeinu Bachia, they're planning to then come back. With Egyptians coming after them, drowning in the sea, no reason to go back, so then they carried on. That's his approach. There are 2 other approaches that I'd like to share with you. And these go under the category of a necessary ruse, meaning trick. Okay? One approach, we'll see the Medrash in a moment inside, it showed Paro's intransigence. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chased. Let's hear the words of the Medrash now. V'ata, and now, Nelchana, let us please go, derech, onto the road, Shloshit Yamim, 3 days. The Medrash says, Lama Amru Shloshit Yamim. Why did they say, our question, why did they say 3 days? V'lo Amru Nelchana la'olam. And they didn't say, let us go, let my people go, as we say. Lama Amru came. Why did they say this? Kedei sheyitu hamitzriyim, in order to to trick the Egyptians. V'yirdefu achareim, and they will come chasing after them. Bishah sheyatzu, when they had left. V'yom, when they said lo ga'alam, we only let them go. Menat sheyalchu gimel yamim, in order to go 3 days. V'yizbechulo, and they'll offer these sacrifices. V'heim ikvu atzman kolkach, and they held themselves back. V'yirdefu achareim, and then they chased after them at the end of the 3 days. V'yatviyim biyam, and God drowned them in the sea. Why? So why would God trick these Egyptians in order to bring them out and drown them in the sea? Limdod lahem b'mida shemadado. There is a concept called mida keneged mida, measure for measure. There's a divine reciprocity. and kol haben hayilod hayaoro, etc., right? They had drowned our boys in the Nile, right? And according to some commentators, the first of the plagues that we'll have in next week's parsha, the first of the plagues was the Nile turned to blood. And what was that message? Well, why do they say throw them into the Nile? Oh, because it's very convenient, right? It gets washed away. It's forgotten. There's deniability. There's no need to have to worry about it. It disappears. The crime gets washed away. It's as if it never happened. It's as if it never happened. The Nazis, Yimach Shemam, utilized some rivers in a similar manner, right? It's not our problem anymore. It's as if it never happened. The first of the plagues was that the water, the Nile, turned bloody. It did happen. It did happen. There is accountability. You thought it got washed away by your river. You have a bloody river. There is this accountability. And therefore, yes, this was Mida Keneged Mida. They deserved to be drowned in the water. And therefore, this was a pretense that was set up in order to bring to them their heavenly decreed measure for measure result of their actions. Mida Keneged Mida is this idea of the mirror in the sky, the boomerang, that which you do comes back upon you. And this is a concept that we have throughout, right? Going into the high holidays, we say everyone should be very careful to be very, very accepting of one another, forgiving of one another, not standing on ceremony, right? How dare they? Take it easy. Take a deep breath, right? Deal with it. It's okay. Let it go. And the idea being that the way that we treat others is the way that we get treated, both by others and also by the heavens, by Hashem. And therefore, this was, they deserved, they had to be drowned in the Yam, and this was the way to bring that about. Lastly, and it's interesting, when we think about what went on this past year, right? Well, let's see the Ramban first, and then we'll discuss that a little further. Ramban, sorry, that's all in Hebrew. I could have found the English. I didn't find the English. I apologize. The Ramban has a different approach. Ramban's approach is that the children of Israel were not yet prepared, to leave Egypt permanently. We were not yet ready for it, and wouldn't have agreed to enter and conquer the land of Israel. Where does the Ramban see this? When God was speaking to Moshe by the burning bush, which of course was at the top of Mount Sinai, or that which would later be called Mount Sinai. That's why the pasuk refers to it as Har HaElokim, the mountain of God, that which would be known as the mountain of God, where God would appear to him. Vayomer, and he said, Ki ayeh imcha, I will be with you. V'zeh lecha ot, and this is the sign. Rabu apirushim b'mikra zeh. There are many, many different commentaries on this pasuk. And Ramban says, V'anachon, what appears to me to be correct, al derech hapshat, the simple reading. Akadosh Baruch Hu amar Moshe shnei dvarim. God said to Moshe two things, 2 points. Number one, she'irei latzilo mi'ad Mitzrayim. I want you to go down into Mitzrayim, to Paro, into the palace, because he could have saved them in the land of Goshen. Right? Just have a quick exit from the land of Goshen where they were living. O Karov Misham, or close to there, have a vantage meeting point, and then go out. Why did he need to go into the heart of Egypt? Why did Moshe have to go into the heart of Egypt, into the palace of the Pharaoh to do this? 2, Hivtiach od la'alotam min ha'aretz hahi kula el makom ha'kanani, and to bring us out of that whole area to the land of Canaan. Moshe nityarei mishtein, and Moshe was afraid of both of these. He said, first of all, mi anochi ki elech al paro, who am I to go before the Pharaoh? Ani shafal anashim, I'm a lowly person. Roet son, I'm a shepherd. V'hu melech gadol, and he is a great, powerful king. V'im omer elav la'azov et ha'am kulo, if I tell him, hey, let the people go, right? You're going to lose his whole nation. What will he do? Yargeni, he'll kill me. Like we find Ke'inyan Shama Shmuel, when God told the prophet Samuel, go and anoint King David to be the king. What was Shmuel's response? The Shama Shaul, King Saul, is not going to be all that happy with such a proclamation. He'll hear, Vargeni, and he'll kill me. V'amar od. So that's one problem that Moshe is bringing up, right? You don't want to send me to the Pharaoh, right? I don't talk very well, right? I'm a simple person. Send someone else. Anyone, Ramban says about that Moshe was saying, anyone is worthier than I to do this. Secondly, Va'amar od, mi anochi, who am I that I will take the children of Israel out from the land of Mitzrayim, as you said, lahalotam, to bring them up, el eretz Canaan, to the land of Israel, land of Canaan. Ki am chacham v'navon hagoy hagadol hazeh. This is a very smart, wise people. Lo yichashvuni lalechet acharai. And I'm going to say, follow me. And they're going to say, follow you? That's not all that encouraging. That's not all that inspiring that we have a chance. They will not consider me worthy. That they'll follow me. El Eretz, to a land of Amim Gdolim, big nations, Atsumim, bigger and more powerful than they. Kasher Amarta, that you said I should bring them up to Eretz Tov Chava, El Makom HaKanaani. So we're not ready yet to hear this. We were the ones who needed to hear 3 days. Oh, 3 days? Okay, I'll follow this Moshe character. We can follow him for 3 days, right? If Paro will agree, fair enough. But to go to the land of Israel and fight against the awesome nations there, then Moshe was saying to God, they won't listen to me. They will not want to follow me. So according to Ramban, this was necessary in order to get the Israelites to sign up. And when I think about the whole thing with Hezbollah, right, that we were so afraid. I was talking to my son, who lives in Israel, has been in the reserves, right? And he was saying that, if it's going to break out into full war with Hezbollah, then the talk was there's going to be a lot of civilian casualties. 150,000 rockets. It'll overwhelm the Iron Dome. And my son was saying the talk is that Israel will need to move those Iron Dome batteries to protect critical military sites, and no longer there to protect all of these civilian sites. And the thought was that, hey, a fight against Hezbollah with all of their missiles is going to exact a tremendous cost. And that is what Iran was banking on, right? Israel's not, right? We're safe. We don't need to protect so much, because if Israel does anything, we have the ring of fire around them with Hezbollah, with Assad, right? And we were not looking to start, but that was the medrash, right? They needed to get what they needed to get. They needed to get their mida keneged mida, their divine reciprocity, and therefore Hashem lured them and pulled them out from their spot and gave them the confidence. Oh, we can do this. We're invincible. That's what lured Hamas on October 7th. That's what lured Hezbollah. And along the way, it came crashing down on them. Again, we are not celebrating, right? We don't celebrate because, oh, we killed more of them. Killing them is not our goal. Protecting ourselves, living a normal, please God, peaceful life, that is our goal. And the reason why we're not celebrating this victory, besides all the losses, those who have died, and besides all that the hostages who were released did endure, and the hostages who have not yet been released, right, still have to endure, right? So if we don't solve that, then it's not, for us, it's not a point of rejoicing. We hope for the sim shalom, the true peace, and then we can rejoice. But as we've learned, Osa Shalom ben Ramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'kol Yisroel, that Hashem needs to make His peace up in the heavens. There needs to be the heavenly decision that now is a time for peace, and that is when it will come about. And until then, we need to do whatever we can do to try to increase the kedusha, the holiness in the world, to try to increase the shalom in the world, and that way we hope and pray that the time of the ultimate shalom will come about. Bimheira v'yameinu, speedily in our days. Yes, Dov.
Isn't it interesting that they're trying to get the people back into Egypt, and here in this country we want to deport us.
Okay, good. We'll call it over here, my friends. Once again, thank you, Your Honor. And that was the Eli Nishmas David ben Moshe Aharon. Zichron Levracha. Would you share a little bit with us about your father?
My father was a third-generation Sabra, Palestinian, born after World War I, but before Israel was created.
Where were his parents? Oh, third generation. His grandparents. Wow.
And his father raised him, wanted him to be an Orthodox rabbi, but he chose to become a dentist. And he had a good sense of humor. He said he was a painless dentist. He didn't feel anything. And he was also an extraordinary Balkora.
What's that?
Oh, really?
For
Torah reader.
For 2 decades, he was the Balkora every week at our shul without compensation. Something very interesting. After he passed away, which was 55 years ago, months later, in the attic, going through papers, I found the passport that my father came to America on as a child. And I was shocked. The passport was from Turkey. It said place of birth, Jerusalem. Not Jerusalem, Palestine, just Jerusalem. And because the British had I don't know what the word was, over Palestine.
The mandate.
A mandate. But they didn't give British citizenship or Commonwealth status. So, because when he was born, it was under the Ottoman Empire, they forced the Turkey at that time to issue passports to these people. My father never
Who were
physically.
born before the mandate.
Correct.
And those who were born after the mandate?
I have no idea. No, after the mandate.
But before Israel.
Israelis.
But before Israel. From 1917 to 1948 was the British mandate.
Right, so 1948
So anyone born from I'm wondering from after after Turkey was out and the British were in, probably just said Jerusalem. Probably just said Jerusalem. You know,
that I don't know. But
Yeah.
the point was that if anybody would ask, he was always proud to say he was born in Israel, but he was a child and there was no Israel. And they were very poor. My grandparents had 6 children, and my grandfather came to America alone by himself. He didn't have enough money to bring the family. He got a job in New York, and he brought over 1 child per year. He didn't see his wife for about 8 years.
Wow.
No telephones, only mail. And they always planned they're going to go back to Israel. I always heard that as a child, but it didn't happen. Although some of my grandparents' descendants raised in New York have gone back to Israel. Anyway, he was, after World War II, after Israel was created, he was very instrumental in having the first United Jewish Appeal breakfast fundraiser on Long Island, the first Jewish National Fund fundraiser, the first Israel Bond fundraiser, and he died young.
How old was he when he passed away?
He was 5 days short of 59.
Wow.
And he was a very kind person. I remember there was somebody, one of his patients, died unexpectedly. And the patient owed my father several $100s, which in those days would today be like several $1,000s. When my father heard that the person had died, instead of sending a bill to his house or to his widow, he just tore it up, absorbed it. I don't know if the wife ever even found out that her late husband owed my father money. So he was a very kind person. And during World War II, he was a lieutenant. But because he was a dentist, he was fortunate. He didn't have to go to battle. He was assigned to some basic training place in Texas and make sure that the recruits wouldn't get any
Cavities?
toothaches on the battlefield. And he met people from the South who claimed they'd never met a Jew before.
They probably looked for his horns.
Huh?
They probably looked for his horns.
Yes, and one of them asked him, where are your horns? And, so there actually were people who believed that nonsense.
Yeah.
Today, is it his yahrzeit or his birthday?
Yahrzeit. Yesterday was the yahrzeit. How old were you when he passed away?
Huh?
How old were you when he passed away?
Now you're going to figure out my age. Well, I'm 27 now. So I was minus,
Were you already established in what you were doing, or when he passed
no,
away?
I was in college.
College, yeah.
And he was very kind. That was really
Okay. Thank you.
the first is on breakfast, Jewish National Fund. I'm repeating myself. UJA gatherings were held in the basement of our house. We had a finished basement. It's not a room like this, very nice room. And
And who cooked?
no, everything was kosher catered. I paid for it. And
He had a great influence on you, didn't he?
well, every parent has a great influence on their children. So, but his father was very disappointed. My grandfather wanted him to be a rabbi, and for whatever reason, he became a dentist.
Mm-hmm. Rabbis also pull teeth sometimes.
Right.
Where did he practice?
Make the living. This is like pulling teeth.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we'll call it over here.
When were you practice?